Ever since the dawn of time, mankind's vast imagination has set it apart from every other species in the animal kingdom. Everything from outlining quantum mechanics to believing that there is a God comes from the desire to find answers and the curiosity found in every one of us. And more often than not, people will use stories as a way to expand on ideas they had or explain things that they otherwise couldn't. In the modern day, this is usually exemplified through film. In fact, many of the best movies of all time can be broken down into a simple what-if question. What if space travel was feasible and there was a central government that was corrupt that ruled the galaxy? What if toys were alive and felt emotions when they were played with? What if time travel were possible and you could attend high school with your parents? On paper, these ideas all seem to have great storytelling potential, but without proper execution, they might fall flat on the ears of its audience. Films like Toy Story and Star Wars would not have been as revolutionary and successful as they were if they lacked good directing, good acting, good animation, etc. And in the case of the last film I referenced, Back to the Future, it would be true for it too. Not only for the reasons I already said, but because of its prop work. Without reliable prop and set design, a movie cannot fully invite its audience into the world it's created. The audience will be less likely to suspend their disbelief and enjoy what they're watching if it looks faked. This art form is still present in film today, but with the advent of 3D modeling and CGI, it's not as prominent as it once was. After all, if a film needs a certain prop, they could just 3D print it. Or if they need to be at a certain location, they could just film against a green screen and edit it in later. So that leaves us with a few questions. 1. Why are physical props more believable than 3D prints and CGI? 2. What disconnect is there in filmmaking when a film uses too much CGI in place of physical stuff? And 3. What is the effect of tangibility in regards to the audience that view the films these props are part of? My name is Daniel Urban, and I will be discussing with you the importance of prop making as a storytelling device in film. When making the Back to the Future trilogy, Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale made many decisions they eventually went back and rethought about. For instance, in early drafts, the time machine was supposed to be a refrigerator, not a car. But Zemeckis and Gale were worried that kids would be locking themselves in refrigerators, trying to imitate the movie, and they also figured if you built a time machine, you'd probably want it to be portable. Around that same time, John DeLorean was on trial for some minor drug trafficking. But it got Zemeckis and Gale thinking, what if we built the time machine out of a DeLorean? Had the DeLorean been some other car, it's unlikely it would have had the reputation it has today. The DMC-12 was just such a crazy, goofy design that screamed the 1980s, a perfect fit for the modern day of 1985, and also a perfect fit to stick out like a sore thumb in 1955, just as Marty McFly does. It wasn't the only car considered, however. They also thought about using a Mercedes 300 SL, which notably also had gull-wing doors. However, price was the problem. They could get 3 DeLoreans for less than the price of 1 Mercedes. So, it kind of forced their hand on which to choose. But had they used CGI, would this have been a problem? They could have just made a model of the Mercedes for use in stunt scenes and things like that, and only bought one for the standard up-close shots and the scenes that have actors interacting with it. In any case, the DeLorean did become the base for Zemeckis and Gale's time machine. They hired Ron Cobb and Andrew Probert to draw designs for a time machine DeLorean, and once finalized, it was handed over to Kevin Pike and his studio Filmtrix to make 3 DeLoreans, which they dubbed the A car, which was your hero car, the B car, which was the stunt car, and the C car, which was cut up and used for interior shots. The cars were loaded with detail, even on stuff that was never really shown on screen. But to the keen-eyed viewer, it provided some nice eye candy and some lore and backstory to how this machine worked. Something that isn't often found in modern-day films. It was also very important to Zemeckis and Gale that the car not look too perfect. After all, Doc Brown was a crazy, eccentric, mad scientist character. He built this thing in his garage, so it had to look like he built it in his garage. So, Pike and his team used surplus aircraft junk that they found that's been sitting in a warehouse for decades, gathering dirt and grime and whatever else. Would that level of dirtiness and realism have been possible with CGI, or fake 3D printed parts painted to look old? I doubt it. Of course, stuff like this could be achieved with CGI if enough effort was put in. But even then, there's still a pretty noticeable disconnect between CGI and practical effects. Have you ever watched a movie or a film and been able to tell when a green screen was used because the composition was so bad? Or have you ever seen a CGI model that just looks so fake it completely ruined your suspension of disbelief? Movies of any era can have this problem. Even Back to the Future has a couple moments like that. But the difference between a movie like Back to the Future having problems like that and a movie like one of the Star Wars prequels having a problem like that is the amount of times it occurs. In Back to the Future, there might be 1 or 2 shots that don't hold up so well, but in the Star Wars prequels, it's most shots. CGI, particularly bad CGI, can severely date a movie if it's used too much. But that sort of thing doesn't happen with practical effects, because they're filmed as they really are. A camera films an actual tangible object with all its imperfections and ways that it reflects light and all that kind of stuff. It still holds up because it doesn't look that different to how the actors are portrayed. Practical effects can be blended into shots much easier than CGI effects can. It takes a lot more effort to combine something rendered in a computer with something filmed by a camera. This can also be a problem for actors and actresses trying to interact with something that isn't actually there. If you're told to interact with an alien creature that will be added in post-production, your acting might seem a little stilted or fake because you have nothing to reference while you're acting. Even if there was a guy standing there that got edited out when the creature was edited in, at least it would give you something to talk to and it would be more convincing. A little bit of tangibility goes a long way. This brings me to my next point. The benefit of having a tangible prop instead of a digital asset that doesn't actually exist. Let's say you're a Back to the Future fan, and you desperately want to see the original screen-used car from the movie. Well, if the DeLorean in the film was nothing but a digital asset added in post-production, there's nothing for you to see. Sure, you could potentially view the model on a screen, but how is that any different than viewing the model on the screen when you're watching the movie? And sure, somebody could use that model to 3D print or otherwise replicate the car, But even then, that replica is not the car in the movie. The car in the movie doesn't exist. This is different to the sensation of actually seeing a screen-used prop in person. You can look at that prop and say, that prop is the one from the movie in my memories. That prop is the one that my favorite characters interacted with. That simply cannot happen when the asset is completely digital. Of course, movies still use physical props, but they're usually modeled in 3D and then printed or mass-produced. And that brings up another problem. See, with the DeLoreans, even though there were 3 of them for the original film, they were all unique. They all had differences from each other. There was only one A car, there was only one B car, and there was only one C car. But if something is a 3D model and mass-produced, how are you going to be able to tell if something was screen-used or if it was just one they made but never actually saw any time on screen? But I think the biggest group of people affected when assets are only digital is the prop-making community. After all, how can you take reference pictures and measurements of something that is only inside of a computer? The A car specifically benefited from this. It sat on Universal's backlot for years, and it allowed replica builders to go up to it, take measurements, take pictures, and nail down every last location of every screw hole and nut and bolt on that car. And that's part of the reason it's such a popular car for replica builders to make. And if you couldn't tell by my surroundings, I too am planning to build a replica DeLorean time machine. Behind me are my most recent and mostly completed projects, the time circuits. The time circuit displays behind me are what actually shows your destination time, present time, and last time departed. You input your destination time on that keypad. Next to me on this side is the time circuit switch, also known as the TFC. That name comes from the label on the side of it, which actually originally referenced the first name for the flux capacitor, the temporal field capacitor, or TFC. However, since the flux capacitor got a name change to what we know it as now, that label kind of fell into obscurity. So fans have decided to dub the switch the label is on as the TFC instead. One interesting and fun thing about the DeLorean specifically is how it cleverly reuses household objects to decorate the car with. The Y handle on the TFC switch, for instance, is actually a 3-way battery cleaner from Pep Boys. They can still be bought today, and when I found that out, that's pretty much what started my time machine building journey. Being able to just go to a store and buy such a visually iconic prop for $5 was really appealing. And then over time I eventually got the rest of the pieces necessary to make the box up. The last thing that I ended up completing was the actual switch itself. That switch is actually an industrial drum switch made by Dayton, a Model 2X442. They're still made today, but differ in appearance from the vintage ones used on the original cars. So of course, I wanted to get a vintage one. They pop up from time to time on eBay, but tend to sell for a pretty penny, probably because of their use in time machines. Eventually, however, I found a switch that wasn't modern, but wasn't vintage. It was kind of a hybrid of both. I bought that, and then over time, bought bargain switches and kit bashed them to make a perfect switch, which is what is on my TFC now. The circuitry was simple enough. For convenience and safety purposes, I used a model train transformer as the power input for now. That runs into this toggle switch that has the green switch cover. The toggle switch is in there upside down, so that when the cover is closed and the switch down, it receives power. Having the toggle switch operate that way is accurate to how it is in the films, when this switch cover is always down, yet the TFC still operates as normal. From there, both the Dayton and a 12-volt relay inside the box receive power. The Dayton receives the power at 2 of these input strips, so that whichever way you turn the handle, it still receives power when it's on the on state. The red off indicator is connected to the normally closed pin on the 12-volt relay, while the green on indicator is connected to the normally open pin. When the switch is turned to either of the two on positions, it powers the coil inside the 12-volt relay and switches which of the two pins, normally closed or normally open, receives power. Let's plug it in and see how it works. The journey to build a time machine will continue going on for many years in my life, but it's been a fun experience so far. Being able to apply the hardware and software knowledge that I learned at Cal U for something I personally enjoy is fantastic, and the never-ending treasure hunt for these vintage pieces is a thrill. And it's pretty damn remarkable that a 1980s sports car fitted with a bunch of aircraft junk can make someone feel this way.